Let me tell you something that is being discussed in classified briefing rooms across Tel Aviv, Washington, and every NATO capital right now, but that you will not hear in any public statement, any press conference, or any mainstream media analysis. Iran has just demonstrated a capability that fundamentally changes the strategic calculus of this entire conflict. And what I am about to walk you through is not speculation. It is not worst-case scenario planning. It is an operational reality based on what Iran showed the world 72 hours ago, and what that demonstration means for the next phase of this crisis. 3 days ago, Iran launched a coordinated strike package against Israeli territory that included a weapon system most analysts did not believe Iran had operational. The Fatah-2 hypersonic glide vehicle, not a ballistic missile that follows a predictable parabolic trajectory, not a cruise missile that can be tracked and intercepted, a hypersonic maneuvering re-entry vehicle that travels at Mach 15, changes course during terminal phase, and arrived at its target in central Israel without being intercepted by any layer of Israel's vaunted air defense architecture. I am not here to tell you that Iran has achieved parity with American or Chinese hypersonic programs. I am here to tell you something far more consequential. Iran has achieved enough capability in this domain to render Israeli air defenses operationally obsolete against the specific threat profile that matters most. And having spent years as a weapons inspector, having analyzed air defense systems across multiple theaters, I can tell you with absolute professional certainty that what Iran demonstrated 3 days ago is not the ceiling of their capability, it is the floor. Let me be very precise about what happened because the technical details matter enormously, and the mainstream coverage has been either inadequate or deliberately misleading. The Fatah-2 hypersonic glide vehicle that struck a military installation near Palmachim Air Base, south of Tel Aviv, was not launched as a standalone test. It was part of a larger strike package that included 40 conventional ballistic missiles, 60 cruise missiles, and approximately 150 drones. That is not a weapons test. That is a doctrine demonstration. Iran was showing Israel and showing the world that they can now execute saturation attacks where the hypersonic component acts as the penetrator that overwhelms the defense while the conventional missiles and drones deplete the interceptor magazines. The Fatah-2 traveled approximately 1,400 kilometers from its launch point in western Iran. It reached speeds estimated at Mach 13 to Mach 15 during its mid-course phase. Then during the terminal phase, the final 40 seconds before impact, it executed lateral maneuvers that took it off the ballistic trajectory that Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow 3 are designed to intercept. The result was not a near miss. It was a direct strike, and the Israeli Defense Forces, in their post-incident assessment, acknowledged that the interception attempt failed not because of operator error, not because of system malfunction, but because the target maneuvered outside the engagement envelope of every interceptor system Israel deployed against it. Let that land for a moment. Israel's multi-layered air defense architecture, the system that has been marketed as the most sophisticated in the world, the defensive umbrella that American taxpayers have funded to the tune of billions of dollars, failed to intercept a single hypersonic glide vehicle in an engagement where they had advance warning, where they had multiple intercept attempts, and where they deployed every available system. That is not a tactical setback. That is a structural vulnerability that changes everything about how this conflict will develop. Now, here is where this analysis becomes genuinely alarming, and I want you to stay with me, because the mathematics I am about to walk you through explain why Israel's strategic position deteriorated to a point that no amount of American military aid can reverse in the time frame that matters. Iron Dome interceptors, the Tamir missiles that form the backbone of Israel's short-range defense, cost approximately $50,000 per unit. Israel maintains an estimated stockpile of 2,000 to 2,500 interceptors. David's Sling, the mid-range system designed to engage medium-range rockets and cruise missiles, uses stunner interceptors that cost approximately $1 million each. Israel has an estimated 500 of these, Arrow 3, the high-altitude system designed for ballistic missile defense, uses interceptors that cost approximately $3 million per unit. Israel has fewer than 100 of these. In the strike package that Iran launched 72 hours ago, Israel expended an estimated 280 Iron Dome interceptors, 40 David Sling interceptors, and 8 Arrow 3 interceptors. That is one engagement, one night, and it cost Israel approximately $60 million in defensive ammunition to stop a strike package that cost Iran approximately $15 million to produce and launch. The cost-exchange ratio favors the attacker by 4-to-1, and that assumes every interceptor hit its target, which the Fatah-2 engagement demonstrates is not a valid assumption. But the real mathematics that should terrify Israeli defense planners is not the cost ratio. It is the depletion timeline. Iran demonstrated 72 hours ago that they can launch strike packages of 250 to 300 inbound threats in a single wave. If Israel faces 5 such waves, which Iranian doctrine suggests is well within their operational capacity to sustain, Israel will have expended its entire Iron Dome inventory, not degraded it, not reduced it to minimal levels, expended it completely. And the production rate for Tamar interceptors is approximately 500 units per year from the Israeli defense industry, with American manufacturing providing an additional 300 to 400 units annually under surge conditions. Iran can deplete Israel's interceptor magazines faster than the United States, and Israel can replenish them. That is not a theoretical problem. That is an operational reality that will define the next phase of this conflict. And the hypersonic component that Iran just introduced makes the problem exponentially worse because hypersonic interceptors do not exist in Israeli or American inventory in meaningful numbers. The SM-6 Block IB that the United States is developing for hypersonic defense is not yet in full production. The Patriot PAC-3 MSE has marginal capability against maneuvering hypersonic targets. What Israel faced 72 hours ago is a threat category that their defensive architecture was not designed to defeat and cannot be rapidly upgraded to counter. Let me take you inside the strategic implications of this capability shift, because this is where Iran's next move starts to come into focus. Iran has not demonstrated hypersonic capability to show off. They have demonstrated it to establish a new baseline for escalation management. The message to Israel is simple and unambiguous. Your air defenses, the protective umbrella you have relied on for 2 decades, can be penetrated at will by systems you cannot intercept. The message to the United States is equally clear. The billions in defensive aid you have provided to Israel, the multi-layered architecture you have helped build, can be saturated and overwhelmed by a regional power using weapons that cost a fraction of what the defense costs. And the message to every government in the region is this: the strategic balance has shifted. The actor with offensive advantage in this confrontation is not Israel, it is Iran. And having spent years analyzing these exact dynamics in Iraq, having watched how air defense saturation works in practice, I can tell you that once the perception shifts, once regional actors understand that Israeli air defenses can be overwhelmed, the operational behavior of every militia, every proxy force, every state actor in the region will change accordingly. Stay with me, because what I am about to explain next is the part that should concern anyone tracking where this crisis is heading. Iran has not yet employed the full spectrum of capabilities they have developed over the past decade. The Fatah-2 demonstration was a proof of concept. It was Iran showing one arrow in a very full quiver. What they have not yet demonstrated, but what intelligence assessments suggest they possess, includes the Fatah-3, an advanced variant with extended range and improved terminal maneuvering. The Khaybar-Shekun, a medium-range ballistic missile with precision guidance and penetrating warheads specifically designed for hardened targets. And the Imad, a variant capable of carrying multiple independent re-entry vehicles. The strike package Iran could assemble using the full range of their operational systems is not the 250-unit demonstration they launched 72 hours ago. It is a coordinated assault involving 500 to 700 inbound threats across multiple threat categories, multiple altitude bands, and multiple approach vectors designed specifically to overwhelm defensive capacity through sheer volume, while the hypersonic component strikes high-value targets that conventional defenses cannot engage. That is not a scenario I am inventing for dramatic effect. That is Iranian military doctrine as assessed by multiple Western intelligence agencies, and the only reason Iran has not executed that level of strike is that they have not yet decided the strategic benefit justifies the regional escalation it would trigger. But here is what changes that calculus. Every time Israel strikes Iranian assets, every time the United States provides additional offensive support, every time the escalation ladder moves up another rung, the threshold for Iranian employment of maximum capability moves closer. And the mathematical reality of interceptor depletion means that Israel's defensive position weakens with every engagement, while Iran's offensive capacity remains essentially unlimited, because they can produce missiles and drones faster than Israel can produce interceptors. Let me give you the scenario that keeps Israeli defense planners awake at night, because this is the operational nightmare that the Fatah 2 demonstration just made credible. Iran launches a coordinated strike package of 600 inbound threats. The composition is deliberate. 100 hypersonic glide vehicles targeting air defense radar installations, command and control nodes and airfields, 200 ballistic missiles targeting military installations, logistics hubs and critical infrastructure, 200 cruise missiles following terrain-masked approach routes to evade early warning, and 100 drones providing real-time battle damage assessment and forcing continuous defensive engagement. Israel's defensive response requires intercept attempts against every identified threat. Iron Dome engages the short-range threats. David's Sling engages the medium-range missiles and cruise missiles. Arrow 3 engages the high-altitude ballistic threats. But the hypersonic component, the 100 Fatah 2 and Fatah 3 glide vehicles, cannot be reliably intercepted by any system in Israeli inventory. They penetrate, and every radar site they destroy, every command node they eliminate degrades the effectiveness of the remaining defensive systems against the conventional threats that follow. That is called suppression of enemy air defenses through saturation and penetration. It is a doctrine that has been studied and wargamed extensively, and what Iran demonstrated 72 hours ago is that they now have the capability to execute it against Israeli territory. The question is not whether Iran can do this. The question is under what circumstances Iran decides to do this. And the answer to that question is being determined right now by the decisions being made in Jerusalem, in Washington, and in Tehran about how this crisis escalates. You think you've heard the worst of it. You haven't, because what I have not yet told you is what this capability shift means for the most sensitive target in Israeli territory. Dimona, Israel's nuclear weapons production facility in the Negev Desert, the facility that has already sustained multiple strikes in this conflict, that has confirmed containment compromise, and that sits 90 kilometers from the nearest Iron Dome battery, with no dedicated point defense system capable of engaging hypersonic threats. If Iran can strike military installations near Tel Aviv with hypersonic glide vehicles that Israeli defenses cannot intercept, then Iran can strike Dimona with the same systems. And a hypersonic strike on a nuclear facility that has already sustained structural damage, that already has compromised containment, that already has measurable radionuclide release, is not a hypothetical escalation scenario. It is the logical extension of the capability Iran just demonstrated, and the consequences of that strike, the radiological release, the regional contamination, the international crisis it would trigger, dwarf anything that has happened in this conflict to this point. Let me be very clear about something. I am not saying Iran is preparing to strike Dimona tomorrow with hypersonic weapons. I am saying Iran has demonstrated the capability to do so, and that capability demonstration is itself a strategic message designed to change Israel's escalation calculus The message is, we can reach your most sensitive asset with systems you cannot defend against. Think very carefully about how far you want to push this crisis. If you are not subscribed to this channel, subscribe now, because what is unfolding is not a regional conflict that will be managed through traditional deterrence frameworks. This is a structural shift in the offensive-defensive balance that has governed Middle East security for 2 decades. And understanding what Iran's capability demonstration means, what Israel's defensive limitations are, and what escalation pathways remain open, is not optional information anymore. It is essential context for understanding where this crisis is heading. The mainstream media will show you the strikes, they will show you the interceptions, they will interview officials who will assure you that Israeli defenses remain robust and effective. I am showing you the mathematics. I am showing you the interceptor depletion rates, the cost exchange ratios, the technical specifications of hypersonic systems that cannot be defeated by current defensive architecture. And I am showing you the strategic logic that explains why Iran's next move, when it comes, will not be another demonstration. It will be an operational employment of capabilities designed to achieve effects that Israel cannot prevent. Share this video, because the gap between what you are being told by official sources and what the operational data actually shows has become a chasm, and the people making decisions about their families, their futures, their safety, deserve to understand what the technical reality is, not what the public relations narrative claims it to be. The Fatah II that struck near Palmashim 3 days ago was not the end point of Iranian capability development. It was the opening statement of a new phase, and that new phase is defined by a simple and terrifying reality. Israel's air defenses, the system that has protected Israeli territory for 2 decades, can now be penetrated at will by an adversary that has the industrial capacity to sustain offensive operations longer than Israel can sustain defensive responses. Hit that subscribe button, because this is not over. This is not de-escalating. And understanding what comes next requires seeing past the reassuring statements to the mathematical reality that defensive systems have fundamental limitations, and Iran has just demonstrated they know exactly where those limitations are and exactly how to exploit them. Iran's next strike will not look like the last one. It will be larger, more coordinated, and designed to achieve strategic effects that the demonstration 3 days ago only hinted at. And when it comes, the world will be shocked, not because it was unpredictable, but because the gap between what experts knew was possible and what the public was told was happening was too large to bridge after the fact. You are watching that gap close in real time. Pay attention.